What I'd like to do is spend a few minutes and talk about the importance of big data and how big data is transforming business. But before I do that, I'd like to kind of roll back and look a little bit about the history of data analytics and how we got to where we're at today. If you go back many years, data, first types of data that was used for business was really transactional data. It was data that was running the business, financial systems. It was information about logistics and billing and customer data and employee data and stored in databases. Those data sets were important for business and initially stored in databases that were sequential to start, if we go way back to the mainframe, and then over time developed into relational databases. And so essentially data was running businesses more from a transactional standpoint, helping businesses keep track of their business from a sales perspective, from a customer employee perspective, and help to run businesses. And so as we advanced, the world started to aggregate data into data warehouses, right? So big, data warehouses. So many companies began their journey about using different sets of data to put into a data warehouse, and they used that data predominantly for reporting, right? So reports were generated off of that data. They would capture their billing systems, their financial systems, logistics, employee, and aggregate those into a data warehouse. And when we look at that model was fine, but the value of that type of model for data warehouse was really around reporting and business intelligence, right? So that's really what people derived out of it, was figuring out, how is my business doing? How is that going? And really told, the what about the business, and how many and how much. And when we look at that model, it was very static, right? So reports and views were created, very hard to change, very static. It was also very latent, meaning that it was usually last week's data that was run and populated into this week's data warehouse. So predominantly it was last week's information. It might be last month's information, last year's information, and it wasn't really serving in real time to businesses around the globe. Then maybe about 10 years ago, 5-10 years ago, we started to see the data warehouse become more important to businesses, not just for reporting, but data marts started to be created around the data warehouse. So if there's a big data warehouse, sometimes special projects were created around that data warehouse to serve a particular purpose, and that took time as well to move data into little smaller environments called data marts, but still the information was static, and it was usually last week's data. And that helped a little bit, but then businesses started to move that into real-time transactional business processing, right? For example, insurance claims couldn't be processed in real time without having information out of the data warehouse. So they would use the data warehouse as part of their transactional systems to validate whether it was prior claims or other data that started to move into the data warehouse. So that was kind of how we saw the world about 10 years ago, is the data warehouse became more and more critical, but it was still old data. It was very hard to change, and it was providing limited value to businesses. So as we move into today in terms of where we're at in the industry, it's really an inflection point of how businesses are using data. And Gartner has done a lot of research on this. They found that very few businesses around the globe are leveraging their data sets. They estimate roughly 20% of the businesses are really putting their data to work. And that data historically had been structured data in databases, but even other unstructured or semi-structured data, very, very few businesses are leveraging their information assets to help their business. And they estimate roughly today about 1 in 5 that have a strategy around big data. Out of those companies that are using their data, most of them, roughly about 50% of them, are using their data, their big data, for competitive advantage. They're using that information to get smarter about their business, make changes to their business model, and they're using that in real time in order to gain advantage over competition in their industry, in their competitive field. IDC has done some additional analysis on the effect of big data. And what IDC says is that they've categorized this as, or described big data as what they call the 4 V's. And the 4 V's are the variety of data, the velocity of data, I'll come back to these, the volume of data, and then the value of data. Right? So what companies are using is aggregate data sets around variety. They're not only using their transactional data, but they're using social data, location services, unstructured data, file data, video data to aggregate. So that's the variety, not just database, but other forms of data. Second to that is the speed in which they can get that data into an analytics environment. And what we're finding is that to aggregate that data requires a lot of change in businesses of how they run their systems. But it's all about the speed or the velocity. The third thing is the volume of data, which is how much data. And what we found and what the industry's found is that the volume of data really, really helps. A lot of times, people will take that volume of data, whether it's sensor data, transactional data, they'll reduce it and give you summary views. But there's so much more information in the complete volume of data that can help businesses get smarter. And ultimately, the 4th V of data is around the value, which is not just the what and how many, it's why, right? It answers questions about why, and that's really the value that businesses are getting out of big data, is understanding the insights into why things occur. I often ask customers if you could take your transactional data, add in social data and location services, would that help your business run smarter? If you understood your consumer, where they were, how they networked, what their values were, how they interacted, what their social profiles were, where they were physically located and when, would that help you get smarter about your business? And most customers say, yes, that would help me dramatically. And what we're seeing is that big data is transforming many businesses, from healthcare, financial services, retail, many, many examples of how big data is transforming business. In healthcare, there was some work that was done for the Center of Disease Control in the United States, where they were trying to understand the cause of diabetes. And diabetes is a disease, but it was spreading like a virus. And what they did was they aggregated social data, socioeconomic data, the economic standing of people, the healthcare providing services within regions, and they found that diabetes was actually spreading more from like a virus and less like a disease. And what that helped them with was solve the problem about better education, better programs around healthcare to control the spread of diabetes. Financial services, high net worth clients, why do they leave and go to other financial services firms? So understanding social interaction, the age of the client, what they're doing, who they interact with, their interests, to help retain high net worth clients. And then telcos are using it for keeping customers from going to other providers. Who do they interact with? Where are they when they interact? So that they can create programs about retention of customers in telco environments. And we can go on and on and on about this, many, many examples of how big data can transform business. And then finally, I'll just add that this is a journey. We're at the beginning of really an explosion of the use of big data. And what you'll see more and more and more is that today, more machines are creating information than people. Right? There are sensor data that are generating petabytes and petabytes and exabytes of data on a constant basis, whether it's machine data in manufacturing environments or retail or banking and financial services. And that machine data can give valuable insights into how to make businesses run smarter and how to derive better value out of their information assets. When we look at our EMC's investment, this is a huge focus area for our company. Billy will talk about EMC and the Federation. And like I said, this is the beginning of a journey around how to make information, how to turn that into real customer value.